be mad, pissed off, whatever phrase you want to use, and they're going to be focused on this game. They're probably going to bludgeon South Carolina. And I looked at our, Gamecock Central staff picks going into the weekend, and all of us pretty much had the same thought. South Carolina's probably going to lose this game by 20 or so points. Alabama goes up, like you said, 14-0 in the first half of this game. You're like, okay, here it comes, routes on, and then suddenly you blink and it's 14-12 at halftime, and you're thinking, okay, now we got something here. And then just the back and forth and up and down and all this chaos of the second half, you end up losing by 2, but you did make it a competitive game. That deserves some kind of praise. It's not, the end-all be-all, but you did make a competitive game out of one that nobody thought you were going to be in.
No, exactly. And look, again, they ended up they lost the game. So that's what matters most. And now you've lost 2 games in a row. But that aside, looking at the context and the details of how they lost, they looked much more, I kept saying competitive, but seriously, they looked like all phases were really sharp in this game, I think, for the most part. Offense started doing some really good things. That 16-play drive that took 8.5 minutes was beautiful. That was football execution at its finest. The defense was really solid. The special teams was pretty good in this game. I thought they should have had the block punt, though, early in this game. The thing with South Carolina is, and I don't even know if it makes sense when I say it, but it's they are the most consistent at being inconsistent.
Yes.
You never know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. They are a wild card. They could go out here next week and go to Oklahoma and blow the doors off of the Sooners. Wouldn't shock me. They can go out here and lose by 2 scores. Wouldn't shock me. They could win on a game-winning field goal at the last second. It wouldn't shock me. This team, you never know what you're going to get, and that is the reality of South Carolina football right now.
I will say one thing. One of my big keys going to the weekend was that South Carolina had to play with confidence. When you go back and watch the Vanderbilt-Alabama game, Vanderbilt played like a team that believed they could win the game. They had a swagger and a confidence about them that you don't always see a lot when teams are playing Alabama. You can see teams kind of go into that lethargic mode of okay, well, we're already down a couple scores. We don't have a chance here. Let's just try and stop the bleeding and get out of here with, at least some of our teeth intact, right? But South Carolina was not that on Saturday. They played with a lot of confidence. Let's go to cut number 19 here, Ed. This is Coach Beamer after the game, really in his opening statement to you guys in the press conference about their expectation to win this game. Nineteen. All right, we'll try and get to that in a minute here. Let me know when we have that, Ed. All right, either way, regardless, we'll get to that clip in a minute.
Still got a lot to talk about.
But still got a lot to talk about. But Beamer said, no, we expected to win this game. We didn't go into the locker room at halftime, doing cartwheels because we were only down by 2 points. They had the confidence and the belief in themselves that they needed in that game to end up making it competitive.
This is kind of just like what we talked about last week with how Vanderbilt, no one counted them in for that game against Alabama, and then look what they did. They went out and won. How'd they do it? They had self-confidence in themselves, and they tuned out all the outside noise. I am positive that's what South Carolina did this week, too, because I can tell you no one picked them. And, yeah, look, you need to have confidence in this sport, and, it's good to see that they weren't doing cartwheels or anything at halftime.
Here's Beamer's opening from the presser on Saturday.
Obviously, a great college football game. Congrats to Alabama. They made more plays than we did at the end. Proud of the fight of our team coming down here. No one was surprised by our performance. We expected this. We competed our butts off all 3 phases. Everybody expected to win the football game. Came up a little bit short at the end, but really, really proud of our guys. Credit to Alabama, like I said, they coming off the loss to last week that they had, and then going into halftime, we had momentum, and then they came back out and made more plays than we did in the second half. Questions?
And there it is. Now, having confidence and playing with confidence ultimately doesn't win you games.
But it gives you a better chance.
It gives you a better chance. And again, you don't go in there with the mindset of, oh, we're, fighting an uphill battle here. Like South Carolina played like a team that believed they were on the same level as Alabama. And for a lot of the game, they showed that they could be at times. Now, there was a lot of mistakes in between there that ended up costing South Carolina the game when it was all said and done.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that worries probably some is the fact that, like, again, this week against Oklahoma, you should be able to take care of business because Oklahoma is kind of, I think South Carolina is just a better football team than them.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know what team's going to show up, and that's the troubling part is that they haven't found that consistency. If they are able to limit the turnovers, like that really did lose them the game this time around. They got to clean that stuff up because it kills them with these mistakes game after game.
I have to ask, what you were in the press box there in Tuscaloosa. What was your viewing experience like in the building for this game?
Oh man, I'll show you. I mean, I can't show it on the thing here, but look, it was absolutely fantastic. Here's the view. It was
okay. That's good. Is that where the press box was?
Yeah. So okay,
that's a weird angle.
So for visual purposes, as I'll illustrate it, it's not like Willie B at all, where you're high in the sky, and you're actually at Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're kind of right behind, like the lower bowl. Like you're behind like the bleachers of the lower bowl, sitting behind the fans there, and it's it's not open air or anything, but it was really nice. It was a great view. It's kind of tucked away in one of the corners of the stadium, but still, it's right there, and got to see all the action. It was a crazy game.
Now, how was I could hear it watching it on TV, and we were at O'Hare's. That in and of itself was a crazy environment to be in watching this game. The highs and lows of the crowd. How was that viewing that in person?
It was. I thought it was going to be like more booze and stuff for DeBoer when they were struggling, but no, I mean it was fine. There were actually a decent bit of Carolina fans there. I think it was just because we were sitting. The press box is like right on top of like the whole bleacher section, so it's like you had a section of Carolina fans right in front of us, so you could hear them going nuts when South Carolina was doing something good.
Well, when they showed the crowd shots whenever Carolina did do something good, it did look like there was a decent amount. And look, this is a place that Carolina doesn't get to go to a lot.
Yeah,
it's
the trip. It's a good one.
It's a reasonably short drive, 6 hours. And again, if you get a hotel on Friday night and you drive back on Sunday, it's not that bad. It was a noon game. Like, I can understand why a lot of people want to travel to that one. Look, you go in there more, and I was talking to Bill about this because he went with his son and stuff there as well. He had no expectations. He just wanted to go to have the experience of being in Tuscaloosa, which I think he'd been there, in years past. But I imagine that was a lot of people's expectations. They're looking around like, holy crap, we're in this game in the fourth quarter. We have a chance to win.
That's the thing, man. It's kind of like when an FCS team goes into like a big powerhouse school, no expectation to win. Not saying that's what South Carolina is here, but it's a situation where, they didn't have a chance in most people's eyes, and they went out here and really played a good game, and they just couldn't finish. And I think in this game, I think you can kind of say it's not so much that Alabama beat South Carolina, because I didn't think Alabama played that good really at all in this game, minus a few good plays here and there. I thought it was just more so South Carolina beat themselves, and that's kind of been the constant theme of the season.
A lot to unpack from this game. Share your thoughts with us as well. 803-404-6100 for the Love Chevrolet phone lines, as well as the Firehouse Subs text line. It is a Reaction Monday. We're going to have the Sellers conversation next. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it somewhere in between? With that next, it is the Extra Point on your Reaction Monday. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry here in the game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. Today's October the 14th. It's National Dessert Day. You can end your ultimate meal with something sweet like a crispy apple turnover, cinnamon toast crunch cheesecake, or a simply delicious Twin Peaks sundae down at the Lodge all day long, celebrating National Dessert Day. And of course, tons of sports going on right now. The Major League Baseball in the midst of their championship series going on for the next couple days. And of course, the World Series coming up here in a few days as well. You can catch every pitch of the championship series and World Series down at Twin Peaks, where the bases are loaded with 29-degree draft beers, always up to bat. Of course, TVs as far as the eye can see for any sports you want to view, that amazing menu of food, and of course all those delicious drinks as well, all with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista.
Really just we had a score. We didn't really have timeouts. Then we ran that first play, then it was down to 10 seconds left, so it was like, you got to take a shot to the end zone. We could have probably got an intermediate pass out and spiked the ball or whatever, but I mean, in that situation, you want to get to the end zone, so.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Filtry along with you on Reaction Monday. Again, get involved with us on Love Chevrolet phone lines and Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. Share your thoughts. That was Lenore Sellers discussing the final drive of the game where he did end up throwing the interception after overthrowing Nick Harbor that led to Alabama's 27-25 victory over South Carolina. The Sellers angle of this game is such an interesting debate because another one of my keys going into the weekend was Sellers are going to have to go out there and have a career day if South Carolina wanted to win. Now, reading the discourse of people after the game, a lot of people praising Sellers for being the reason South Carolina was in the game. A lot of people also being critical of Sellers for being the reason why they lost the game. I think both answers can kind of be true at the same time.
Yeah, it depends. I think, look, I'll say the one exception that is not okay is, people just, outlandishly, just going after him. Look, it's 6 games. He's not going to be a fully finished product in 6 games. He's not the only quarterback in this sport that's going through struggles right now. So it's going to take some time. But the Sellers experiment is over and he's a failed project and stuff. It's crazy to me. Now, I will say there are criticisms from that game. Like, the fumbles are getting ridiculous. It's like game after game. He had 3 on Saturday, and 2 of them were lost. And that hadn't been a big issue for him, losing fumbles and other teams recovering. But this time around it was, and they were in pivotal moments. Like, the fourth quarter one especially was right after O'Donnell Fortune had the pick in the end zone. South Carolina was up by 5. And what do you do on the first play? Like, 15 seconds later, you fumbled. And then Alabama went down and scored what would ultimately be I think it's the difference in the game because you were behind by like 8 at that point. So, look, it's just not ideal, these fumbles, but otherwise he played a really good game. It's odd because he gave you he almost won you the game, but at the same time he was probably one of the factors in why this game ended up being out on the wrong end.
And that's the interesting dichotomy here because let's look at his numbers. He had his highest amount of pass yards that he's had so far in 238. Also had his best completion percentage at 74.2 through 2 touchdowns, but also through the 1 interception. Also put the ball on the ground 3 different times. 2 of those were lost, and both the times that they were lost were in huge, critical situations that end up being pivotal points in that game. So there's good, but there's also bad mixed in there. And again, we can't expect a redshirt freshman to go out there and be perfect, right? But especially when it comes to the turnovers, it's becoming a very consistent issue. And I go back to something that Brooks Austin, when we talked to him the other day of the Film Guy Network, he made a point when I asked him, or one of us asked him about, what Sellers and Loggins could have taken away from the Vanderbilt game against Alabama. And he said, it feels like Dow Loggins is having to scheme around a quarterback that is turnover prone and one play away from turning the ball over. And I think that's a really good point. And look, people are very critical of Dow Loggins, and there have been plenty of moments this year, rightfully so. But that is a good point to that he's talking about there, that Sellers is just putting the ball in harm's way a lot. And as an offensive coordinator, that just kind of puts you in a box.
And here's the thing, like, these turnovers that he's having are very avoidable. Like, Beamer talked about it last night on the teleconference. Like, the one in the fourth quarter was on a fake handoff to Rocket Sanders, and as Sellers tried pulling it, he didn't even get a chance to pull it. The ball just went, in harm's way and rolled around. So, yeah, that was a mistake. The other one where he was getting taken to the ground in the second quarter
and just flings it,
and he tries throwing it away. I genuinely just did not know what the thought process was there, because
where's that going?
And I mean, it's your helicopter spinning, and then you're trying to throw it, and imagine that ball hangs in the air for a little bit. Alabama's picking that off, taking it the other way for 6 points. We're not talking about this game being close.
You have to sometimes just take a sack, and that's a situation where you have to do that.
That's what he needs to learn.
And look, and watching that play happen in real time, I couldn't tell if it was a fumble or an incomplete pass. They called it a fumble on field. It was so close. There was not enough to overturn it. You are putting yourself at risk of letting whatever call happens on the field stand at that point when you do those kind of things. And again, if this just happened once or twice this year, we're not making a big deal about it, but it's happening every single game. He's putting the ball in harm's way, but he's also going out there and making great plays. The bomb that he threw to Nick Harbor, where Harbor got the toe down, like, great play. Obviously, some of the runs that he had, really great play. Like, you're getting a good mix, but it's just, again, he's winning you and losing you the game at the same time.
Yeah, and this was probably, like, statistically speaking, outside the turnovers, probably his best game of the year. Like, he really did show some great things. Like, he threw into some really small windows, made some good throws. That throw there at the end to Nick Harbor was great. But we also need to talk about the 2-point conversion, which that throw, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He did have the guy coming in his face right at the end there, but I've seen people say he should have thrown it earlier. Look, he had Dre Jacobs kind of open, in the corner there of the end zone, and he just missed the mark by a lot. He's gonna learn from it. He's gonna grow from it. But you got to make that throw. That's a key play right there he missed out on.
Going back and watching or skimming through the game again last night, I went back and watched that final play where he overthrew Harbor. And I don't know if that was a miscommunication on the route or if he just simply overthrew him. But I can't tell who it is. I think it's Trey Jacobs, wide open in the flat. Like, standing at about the 40-yard line, had a bunch of green grass, could have easily gotten to maybe the 30, maybe even farther, and set up Alex Herrera for a mid-range field goal to potentially win the game. But Sellers just uncorks it and throws a deep ball when he didn't necessarily need to do that because you're just trying to fight to get 3 points at that point in time. That's another thing. Like, going through his progressions, he struggles with that as well. Sometimes if that first read isn't there, he just takes off and runs, which isn't always a bad thing, especially when you have a poor offensive line. But some of the throws he makes are ill-advised when he has wide-open guys elsewhere.
That's the thing is you had other options besides Nick Harbor. I don't fully disagree with the idea of throwing deep to him because it worked last time, so strike while the iron's hot. At the same time, 13 seconds left. That's enough time, even with no timeouts. Run 2 plays, get out of bounds. Shoot, if you're even inbounds, spike the ball. You'll have a first down. Like, he had, I thought it was Larvadane, but maybe I'm wrong.
It could have been. I going
it's
back
tough
and
to
watching because I couldn't tell with the numbers and everything was going so quick and all that kind of stuff. Regardless, he had a receiver out in the flat that could have easily gotten him to probably the 30 or better yard line with an ability to go out of bounds and set you up for a field goal. And, maybe we're talking about South Carolina winning 28-27 on a Herrera kick or something.
That's the thing. And look, I know people are going to say, like, oh, you can't trust Herrera because he missed that 51-yarder earlier. Well, I don't think he should have ever been in that spot to begin with because, look, it was just a bad spot to be in for him. But anyway, like, in that situation, I think you definitely trust him to go out there and kick it. Look, it would have been much closer.
You had a better shot of doing that than launching one to the end zone.
All you needed was a field goal.
Yeah.
And you took a shot to the end zone. And it just wasn't like the execution just wasn't there because it looked like Nick was slowing down on the play. I think it's attributed to the fact he didn't know where the ball was really going in the air. And then Alabama kind of had 2 guys looming in man deep there.
Yeah.
So
really, Damani Jackson was just playing center field at that point in time.
Yeah.
He was 5 yards past where Nick Harbor was, and it was pretty easy catch at that point. Which again goes back, like, was it a miscommunication? Who did not do their job on that play?
And you can't have that. That's a real excruciating way to go out on the final play of the game when you had 13 seconds left. Like, by the time Alabama caught the ball right around the end zone, and good awareness by Malachi Moore to not have him take a knee in the end zone because that would have been a safety because all his momentum was going in that way.
Because he got it about the 4 or 5 yard line and ran into the end zone himself.
So that would have been bad.
I can't even imagine.
Gosh, dude, that would have been. I think oh my gosh, I couldn't even.
That would have been an all-time.
Those final 2 minutes seriously were the craziest 2 minutes of the season so far. And I hate to see South Carolina didn't come out on top. Again, they are close, I think. Limit these miscues that you're having, turnovers, mental mistakes, whatever, and you will be fine, I think. Just you got to limit that stuff because it cannot keep happening.
We've talked about a lot of the negatives so far. there was a huge positive, and that was the defense in this game. We'll dive into some of that coming up next. Again, if you want to get involved, give us your reactions, 803-404-6100, Love Chevrolet phone lines, as well as the Firehouse Subs text line. It is a Reaction Monday. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on the Extra Point on the Game.
Wants to throw it. He's under some pressure going right side. Carolina's got it. That's got to be intentional grounding in the end zone. That's
it's got to
Kyle
be that.
Kennard. Oh, there's the flag.
That's already.
Oh,
Yes.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Felcher along with you on your Reaction Monday. We'll get to some of your thoughts on Love Chevrolet phone lines here in just a minute. It is our Laying the Wood segment brought to you by our friends over at Georgia Pacific. And, man, you heard it there on the call. One of the many, many plays that Kyle Kennard wreaked havoc with on Saturday, that one safety there in the second quarter, forcing Jalen Milroe into the intentional grounding in the end zone. He ended up with 2 sacks under the day, 3 tackles for losses, 7 total tackles, 6 of them solo. Kyle Kennard was everywhere in this game on Saturday.
I genuinely wonder, and I ask all Gamecock fans this, where would this defense be with, and I'm just going to say it, the heart and soul of this defense, Kyle freaking Kennard. He is a beast, a god amongst men. There's so many other ways to describe it. He's up to 7.5 sacks this year. I said a few weeks ago, I do think by season's end, he will break Jadeveon Clowney's single-season sack record at South Carolina. He is that good, and he was terrorizing. I mean, Jalen Milroe is probably going to have nightmares about this dude.
And here's the thing. We talked about it going into the weekend that Alabama's offensive line has vastly improved from a year ago. They were the worst offensive line in terms of sacks given up last year. Jalen Milroe under constant duress. They've improved a lot this year. Going into the weekend, only 2 teams had multiple sacks against them, that being USF with 3 and then Vanderbilt with 2 the weekend before. Nobody had 4 sacks against them. And Kyle Kennard, and I guess technically the intentional grounding does not count as a sack, but it's just as good as a sack because he forced him to throw the ball when he was in basically going to the ground in the end zone. So the effect he had on this game was unreal. And Terry and I were talking about this watching the game at O'Hare's the watch party. Like, how much money do you think he made himself on Saturday in terms of like NFL draft stock? Because this is a dude, solid contributor, did a really good job at Georgia Tech, but I don't think anybody was looking at him as like a high round draft pick. You know, if he decided to come out after last year. Right now, you could realistically be looking at him as maybe like a second or maybe third round guy if he continues to play it this way. Maybe plays himself in the first round for all we know.
I think he's a first round player. Like, I don't know, I don't care what the mock drafts are right now or the projections or the rankings. I see it with my own eyes. No one has been able to stop this dude. He did it against LSU's fantastic Joe Moore Award offensive line. He did it against Alabama. And look, Alabama's offensive line, if you're an Alabama fan, you got a lot of problems to worry about, and that offensive line just isn't up to snuff. But, man, Kennard was just insane. And I thought it was crazy on the safety in the end zone. They had a tight end blocking him, and I don't even know why they weren't double-teaming him to begin with, because so much of their focus is on Dylan Stewart, which rightfully so, because it's a problem with having those 2 guys off the edge. But the tight end just broke off from Kennard. I think ran like a route, a slant or something, and then Kennard was just like, no one's on him.
It was essentially like a delayed rush.
But Milroe was just right there in the pocket, and he's like, I don't even know if he saw it coming, but Kennard just ran right at him. Milroe runs backwards a little bit and tries throwing it away, and then safety. It was. Again, that's one of the many plays in this game. That's why it was as close as it was, and that 5-point swing there in the final minute was just crazy.
That whole sequence right before halftime was just absolutely
nuts.
Absolutely nuts. And again, you had a similar kind of sequence there towards the end of the game that very nearly resulted in South Carolina winning the game. And again, there's so many angles to this. It's crushing though to lose a game that you were that competitive in, and one that your defense gave you a chance. And if you just limit the mistakes, and there was costly penalties, I mentioned the holding penalty on Kamar Bell that ended up stalling the drive that you were on, that ended up leading to Herrera having to attempt a 51-yarder, which of course he missed. Just so much happened on Saturday. That's the simplest way to say it.
It's literally, it's nuts. It's nuts. Like, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. It was just crazy to think about just how crazy this game was.
It is a Reaction Monday. I want to get your thoughts in as well. Let's head out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. James wants to weigh in. James, appreciate your patience. What's on your mind this morning?
Hey, good morning, fellas. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, man. Just a little reaction to the game, man. It was a great game. A great college atmosphere. We couldn't ask for more other than a little bit better quarterback play. But I'm really, in my heart, I'm really thinking that the OC is finally realizing that he's not coaching a NFL prospect. Right now you are coaching a red shirt college freshman. That's what you are coaching right now. And sometimes you just got to peel back his own playbook or his own mindset to realize what he has. He has a kid right now that's struggling to get through his reads, but he also has a dynamic runner. I understand that we want to protect him and do all the other stuff to make sure we can get through games and through season with him because he's our best option right now. But at some point, you just have to realize, okay, he's a freshman. Give him 1 or 2 reads. It's not there, run. If you're not going to hand him the rocket, run. If you're not going to throw a quick slant or a quick stop route or something to one of these, because we actually got very, very good receivers, I think. If you're not giving them the ball quickly or something quick cross, son, tuck the ball in this run. Because sometimes we just have to play to our strength right now, which is our defense. Every team in the SEC is going to struggle to score against us. I don't care what team you name them. Ole Miss did it. Alabama did it. Any other team, Oklahoma's going to struggle next week against that defense. So we know that teams are going to struggle against our defense. Sometimes we just have to play for that. If it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust every other play, I can live with that because I'm putting that defense back on the field. But he's growing. He's getting better. I could take the record we have right now. I could take that going into a game against Oklahoma that's very, very winnable. And I believe that we will be bowl eligible this year. We will end the season on a positive note. So I'll just hang up now and listen to you, man. Great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate
James.
it. And I think a lot of people share that same sentiment. And Jack, you mentioned it earlier when talking about Sellers. Again, he's not even started 6 games in his career. He missed a game and a half between the second half against LSU and obviously didn't play the Akron game. So it is a process. And again, Dow Loggins is having to scheme around a guy that is very inexperienced and is prone to turning the ball over. So that doesn't exactly open your playbook up to everything that you want to do because you do have a very good running back. You do have guys at wide receiver that are showing you flashes of potential. And again, Mazio Bennett coming up with another big touchdown catch, on Saturday as well. But the defense is going to keep you in these games. The defense is going to give you a chance to win every single game as they've done pretty much every single week so far this year. You just got to make sure you're doing whatever you can to limit those mistakes on offense where you're not throwing the game away or handing it to the other team.
Absolutely, man. Like we know, like you said, this defense, they are good enough to go out there and go toe-to-toe with anyone. It's just the offense it's been a work in progress all year. There's been some good highs. There's been some lows. But, again, it's inconsistent on offense. And the next step for this group is they did a better job limiting the penalties. They had more explosive plays, which they definitely needed. Now you got to limit the turnovers. You win the turnover battle in these games with this defense because you forced a lot of Alabama turnovers. You win that turnover battle on Saturday, you're probably walking out of Bryant-Denny Stadium with a win. It's just unfortunate that you ended up fumbling the ball so many times. So, again, it's simple. You just got to really clean up these mistakes, and you'll be fine.
Points off turnovers, 3 on Saturday. You had the interceptions. Yeah. You had the takeaways, and South Carolina can only muster 3 points off that. Mm-hmm. Big stat when you're looking at the overall takeaway from this game.
Oh, absolutely. Like, again, the big one to me is when you're up 5 points in that fourth quarter. You have all the momentum, and you fumble on the first play of the drive. That has to drive you nuts. It's like it happens. Mistakes are going to happen, but it's like first play.
And I don't know what it is about that play because that's the exact same type of play. It was an exchange between the quarterback and
same,
Rocket Sanders, same one that
Robbie Ashford
fumbled with against Ole Miss on what was South Carolina's second drive that ended up leading to the second touchdown for Ole Miss to put them down 14-0. There's something about that play that's not going right because we're now seeing with 2 different quarterbacks having that problem.
Don't run it.
Don't run it.
Don't run it. Don't run it or just hand it off. Like it's just, and it's like it seems so simple. And I don't know how hard it is for a quarterback. I didn't play quarterback when I was playing in high school and stuff, so I don't know. I didn't play at the college level. But I will say it's fake the handoff, pull it back, tuck it, and run. I could be wrong, but again, it's like maybe they're just trying to rush it. I don't know.
I don't know either, but it's so
it's killing them.
It's so frustrating to get the momentum on your side and then immediately hand it back over to the other team.
Like it's one thing
at midfield, nonetheless.
It wasn't even at midfield. It was like at the 30, dude. It was like.
Oh, that's right. The other one was at midfield.
The first one on the helicopter type throw was at midfield.
That's right.
So
that's right.
That's a different story. But this was right.
You're handing it to him in very bad position.
This was right off of the interception, and it's like, okay, if it's a fluky play where the ball just got punched out really quick by an Alabama defender, fine, I'll live with it. But you did it to yourself, and it was on a fake handoff. That's, oh, man.
We'll get to more of your thoughts on the Love Chevrolet phone lines and Firehouse Subs text line as it is our Reaction Monday. South Carolina heads to Oklahoma this weekend. Another weekend for you to win the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest. $700 up for grabs if Carolina can get a special teams touchdown against the Sooners. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win if you have not already. Of course, if there is no touchdown, $800 will be up for grabs when they return from the bye to take on Texas A&M. It is Reaction Monday on the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Reaction Monday on the game. Nameless Texter weighs in and said, Sellers is 0-2 since taking off the specs. Bring back the specs. Maybe that's the answer to the problems here. Maybe he needs to bring the rec specs back because the contact Sellers is not winning these games.
Yeah, but he's playing better.
He is playing better.
Okay. Again, turnovers aside.
But if you're superstitious, I get it.
But it's not even that. Like, even if it is superstitious, the guy, I don't even know. Like, can he see? He probably sees better with the contacts in, right? Because that was the whole point, right? He couldn't.
I guess.
I don't know.
Well, we've not gotten a thorough breakdown on why he made the switch. We just know he made the switch.
We heard about it, I think, a few weeks ago. It's just, I mean, again, it's just so, I don't know. I can't believe we're talking about it.
Well, we're looking for anything that we can at this point in time. So if you think the difference in winning and losing is Sellers wearing specs compared to contacts, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, we got problems.
Let's go out to the Love Chevrolet phone lines once again. Barron's been holding on for a little bit. Barron, appreciate your patience. What's on your mind today?
Hey, guys, I agree with everything you've said, but you're asking something, and I know the answer. He lacks one quality, a good quarterback. So like the guy from Vanderbilt. He has that one quality. Caitlin Clark has it. Pete Mugger is called savvy. He does not have that. I've watched him. I've thought about it. He will come down and play a great game and lose the game. I've played with guys like that. I'm 80 years old. Well, I'm looking way back. And he does not have savvy. It boils down to game intelligence. Thinking on your feet, thinking quick, thinking right. A good high school quarterback with a little bit of savvy could have beat Alabama. We had the game won. I was sick all day after the game ended. But anyway, I've talked to enough. You guys could think about that. I played with guys who didn't have a savvy, and you had to watch them. You didn't know what they might do. I mean, basketball. I mean, it's crazy. A game that doesn't have game savvy, a guy like that, he'll beat you, or something will go crazy. Well, thank you so much for letting me get on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Barron. And again, 803-404-6100 if you want to share your thoughts here in this Reaction Monday. And he brings up an interesting point because when you're a quarterback in Lenore Sellers that's starting your, fourth game, whatever it is, this season because he did miss the Akron game, you still don't know what you don't know. Like, do you remember when, and I'm sure a lot of us had the same experience, when you're like getting ready to drive for the first time when you're like 16 and your dad tells you, hey, I know you're going to go out there thinking you're the man and you own the road, but you don't know what you don't know, and you're going to encounter situations that you don't know how to deal with until you actually have to deal with them. It's kind of the same thing for a guy like Sellers in this situation. You're at South Florence and you're running all over everyone. You're the best athlete on the field, state championships, the whole 9 yards, and you feel like you're on top of the world. But when you jump up to this level and you're playing with the best of the best in college football, you're going to run into situations you've never encountered before. You're going to run into athletes you've never encountered before, and you're going to make mistakes. That's just part of the process. Now, again, you hope you limit those mistakes and get better over time, but you really, at the end of the day, don't know what you don't know, and you just have to learn from these experiences, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And again, he's going to be better from these experiences. Like, again, a loss like this, it stinks. I know. But again, the fact that he really did show you like what his full potential can look like. If he's playing like that week in, week out, moving forward, you're in a really good spot to win these games. It's just going to come down to the mistakes, the penalties, the turnovers, and all that stuff. I mean, you limit those, man. Like we said, this whole entire show, you're in a good spot.
And it's such a double-edged sword because, and he'll admit it after the game too, part of it is, okay, I can't hold on to the ball too long, but I also got to learn when to take sacks. Because I go back to that, the helicopter fumble that he had. It's like, okay, you held on to the ball too long, but you also have to take a sack in that situation. You know what I mean? And again, your protection isn't good up front, so that is certainly part of it as well. But it's one of those things that you just have to learn by taking your lumps, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And another thing I've seen thrown around is the way he is handling the ball. Like, I mean, there's times where it's like he's kind of there's a photo
egregious
that our photographer took for Gamecock Central on Saturday, and it's kind of like he's not tucking it. He's just holding it out for the taking. And so, look, I need to go back and watch the tape on this game today. But if that's something that becomes more of a habit, like he's holding the ball like that, that's a problem where he's not tucking it. He's leaving it out there for, hey, it just put a paw on it. And it's getting knocked out. You got to be able to take care of the ball however you can, because the stuff can't keep happening.
We'll get more of your thoughts. I know a couple of you are waiting on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. We'll jump into some of that coming up in hour number 2 as we continue to break down what happened between South Carolina and Alabama on Saturday as the Gamecocks fall to 3-3 as they are halfway through the regular season in 2024. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you on your Reaction Monday here on The Game. Tyler Head for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time, especially as we've had all the recent rain with the storms. If you have a crawl space under your home, you could have standing water under there, and that is a big problem and could create serious issues with your home, not only for the foundation itself, but also for the health of you and your family, because standing water in your home can lead to things like mold and mildew and pests, termites, the whole 9 yards, and also just affect the air that you breathe overall, because about half of the air that you breathe in your home comes from your crawl space. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. You can go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. They can send in a professional to evaluate what's going on with your crawl space and your home's foundation and get it fixed up right so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. 10 o'clock, welcome back in. It is hour number 2 of the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you, Sam Spear from WIS, hanging out with me as he does on Reaction Monday now. Sam, we were just talking about there in the break, wild afternoon in Tuscaloosa on Saturday with South Carolina just coming up short of knocking off the number 7 Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I was really excited watching that game. It was very exciting to say the least. I know a lot of Gamecock fans didn't see the outcome they were expecting to see, but it was definitely a lot closer than me and you, I think, were both anticipating.
Look, nobody gave South Carolina a chance going into this game because we had the sample size from the week before against Ole Miss where they got beat by 24 points and did not look competitive really at all in that game. Alabama, yeah, they lost to Vanderbilt, but everybody's, had the common thought they're going to come in motivated, fired up, and they're not going to overlook South Carolina. And when Alabama's up 14-0 in the first half of this game, you're thinking, okay, here it comes. It's going to be a 42-7 rout or something along those lines. And then you blink and it's 14-12 at halftime. Then you blink again and South Carolina's up in the second half, and then all hell breaks loose in the fourth quarter, and we're looking at a near Hail Mary win at the end for South Carolina.
Yeah, especially in the beginning of the game, it kind of looked like the script, so to speak, was kind of written already that, okay, it's going to be an Alabama bloodbath. They're going to come out hot. But then you kind of turn around, and then this South Carolina team comes and punches them back in the mouth going into halftime. And I mean, even looking back on it, Jalen Milroe didn't really necessarily have a great game. There were parts of this South Carolina team that looked fantastic, especially in the secondary. I mean, there were glimpses of this team that, I mean, if this was kind of the whole game, I mean, it could have been a totally different outcome.
You're very new to the experience of South Carolina football, but I'll go back to something that Preston Thorne, our guy from the early game, told me prior to last season, which was my first full season covering this team. He said, buckle up, it's going to be a roller coaster ride. And after the game on Saturday, I texted Preston, they need to start charging admission for this roller coaster ride because they take you on so many ups and downs. Again, we looked at a South Carolina team the week before playing Ole Miss, which is a comparable team to Alabama, and looking like they didn't belong in the same league as them, and then going into one of the toughest venues to play in all of college football and taking a top 10 team to the very limit.
I think roller coaster is the perfect way to sum this team up. I mean, in terms of just points on the board, I mean, if we're going to count Akron before Ole Miss, you're going from 25 points this weekend, then you had 3 against Ole Miss the weekend before. I mean, granted, you dropped a 50 burger on Akron, but the week before that, you had 33. I mean, okay, the first 3 weeks, they scored pretty consistently, but over these last 3 weeks, it's like, you go from 50-plus points to maybe like a field goal to a couple scores against. I mean, I don't think a lot of Carolina fans were even expecting South Carolina to put up 3 or more scores in this game. Yeah. So the fact that it was, decided by 2 points and it came down to really the last play, I think it definitely made a lot of fans more excited than they were initially anticipating.
Well, and that's the double-edged sword. Would you rather just get bludgeoned by a team like Ole Miss? And bludgeon's kind of a tough word there, but you did lose the game by more than 3 scores. Would you rather get just beat thoroughly by a team like that or get in a game where it's back and forth and you lose on a heartbreaker? Like, both of them are losses at the end of the day, but it's two very different experiences with the loss.
I think it stings more for this fan base that at the end of the day, when you look at the win, at the end of the day, it doesn't change how the win-loss column is. You can look at 2 of these losses and say, oh, well, those are games Carolina should have had. And they very much were in a position to have both of those games at some point during both of those matchups. So I think it's unfortunate because 3-3 really takes away from how talented this team has been.
This team is a couple of plays away from being 5-1.
Oh, yeah.
The Ole Miss game, that was a rout by Ole Miss. There's no debate about that. But you look at LSU, which, again, that was a game that a lot of people thought, hey, if the officiating is called down the middle, you probably win that game. And if Alex Herrera can make the field goal at the end and go into overtime, who knows what happens. But you are a couple of plays away from being 5-1 on the season, probably ranked somewhere in like the top 15 at this point in time. But instead, you're 3-3 and looking at the final 6 games of your schedule, which are not easy by any means, saying, okay, how do we get 3 more wins to at least get back to a bowl game?
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure South Carolina had 2 interceptions in the second half that if they kind of just held the ball and kind of just let the clock run, they could have really had complete control of this game. And quite honestly, it was heartbreaking watching Sellers, fumble that ball that kind of gave, Bama that momentum to really seal the deal.
Points off turnovers are huge. They only got 3 of them on Saturday, and that was a big key to why they came up short in this game. It is a Reaction Monday. We're getting your thoughts as well. Firehouse Subs text line as well as the Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. Our guy Ray's been holding on for a little bit here. Ray, appreciate your patience as always. What's on your mind today, sir?
Hey, gentlemen. Yeah, I'll tell you, the effort's there. The defense was just spectacular. Kennard, I think he's got a chance to be the 5th all-time consensus All-American in program history. Unbelievable. Defense, you got to give it to him. Offense showed signs. I'm all for Sellers. He's definitely talented, uber talented. But the coaches have got to help him, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, this is probably an unpopular thing to say. I cannot stand the RPO. Because what it does, even if you complete a pass out of it, usually you're going to have linemen downfield because, hell, they don't know if you're going to run the ball or not. I can't stand it because when the quarterback puts that ball in that tailback's belly, right? As a tailback, what's your first instinction? I'm taking this ball. And then the quarterback says, well, I'm going to pull out and run around. So there's too much that can go wrong there. Tennessee almost lost to Florida because of an RPO. Scrap that RPO. If you want Sellers to fake it to Rocket and run around then call that play. But when Fortune intercepted that ball, and then we got the ball at the 20-yard line, and we called an RPO, you see what happens. From that point on, that game belonged to Rocket Sanders because the series before he ran that ball all the way down, and, we missed a long field goal. But he was over there motioning his hand, and I thought initially, don't tell me he doesn't want to come out. No, he was saying, feed me, feed me. And the fact that he did not get that ball in that play and the fact he only got 16 carries in that game, it's mind-boggling. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And that should not have been RPO. Scratch that RPO. That would help Sellers out, because it would take away that opportunity for that turnover. And you see it every week. You see those RPOs where the quarterback and the tailback, you want it, I want it, you want it, I want it. It's too much inconsistency there. And we got a young developing quarterback that's just one thing you could take off of his plate that he doesn't have to worry about. But I just want to get you guys' take. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the call there as always, Ray. And that is a play that South Carolina's had a lot of issues with this year. You talk about the fumbles, you talk about the ineligible man downfield, because again, especially for a quarterback like Sellers that is holding on to the ball a lot, if they think, okay, well, he's running the ball and they're getting downfield, well, guess what? That's going to continue to get that penalty, which has been a consistent problem for this team so far this year. But another thing that Ray touched on there that we haven't even talked about today, Rocket Sanders looked like the Rocket Sanders we've been wanting to see this year. We saw that kind of flash against LSU a couple weeks back, had a long touchdown run and all that kind of stuff. But those plays where he was bouncing the outside, and then some of the plays where he was just pushing guys for an extra 3 or 4 yards when he was getting handoffs, like that is the Rocket Sanders we like to see. 16 carries, 78 yards, and the 1 touchdown, but averaged 5 yards a pop in that game. Like a very good, strong performance from Rocket Sanders, and when they were feeding him, he was getting those yards that they needed. So a good thing to see there. But again, when you have a quarterback that is still making a lot of those critical mistakes and putting the ball in harm's way, unfortunately, you do end up coming up a little bit short.
Yeah, he definitely helped kind of get the offense kind of as a whole really going that game, just from the grounded pound that he really, helped Carolina gain from that game. But ultimately, I think that the fact that he had 16 carries definitely helped a lot. It kind of freed up the rest of the offense. I think he really thrives more when he's not in an environment where he's getting, the bulk of kind of the offense. I think if you keep him if you keep it 50-50 in between, Sellers throwing the ball and Rocket kind of taking carries to the house, I think that's why he was a little bit more productive than, some of the earlier games where we've kind of seen him get more feeds.
Let's head back out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. Brian's been hanging on for a little bit. Brian, appreciate your patience. What's on your mind today?
Hey, guys, I'm going to throw a couple of things at you, so give me a second. I've been a Gamecock since the late 70s. All right, are we a good team? We're better than last year. Do we have the talent on the field to play with top 10 teams? I think we've shown that. Sellers, I'm worried that and several people have brought this up, I think that they're overloading him. That last play, I watched him roll out. He had 2 wide open receivers and he saw a little bit of pressure, so he threw it out of desperation. He overthrew it, but he threw to the longest pass. The shorter pass was the guy in the middle of the field standing wide open. So I don't think that the game has slowed down yet for him. I'm from Florence. I live in Columbia now, but I'm from Florence. I know a lot of people that know the family. He's a smart person, but I don't think he's got there with the football yet, and they might be overloading him. I think that if we can clean all this stuff up, like you just said, we would be a top 15 ball club. But now we're going to turn around, and this great defense, we're going to lose some players. So we've got a lot to adjust for. Is NIL helping? I think it's creating parity across the spectrum. Look what Vandy did. But I think we need to slow down with Sellers. He's got all the tools, and this team can be great. But our play calling is not great at times. We're picking the wrong plays at the wrong time. Like y'all just said, Rocket, my God, feed the guy. He wants to run, and he wants to run over people. But I think we need to slow down with Sellers. He's got all the tools, but we need to back up a little bit and make it easier for him. Guys, I'll hang up and I'll listen to y'all's comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the call. And again, 803-404-6100, Love Chevrolet phone lines, as well as the Firehouse Ups text line on this Reaction Monday. And look, we're not trying to dump on Sellers and say that, he's never going to amount to the quarterback that you want him to be. He is making mistakes, and we're being critical of those mistakes, but it is a process. And like I said, he's only started a handful of games so far in his career, but it does not help that he does not have a good offensive line. And I went back and I took a picture of that last throw where he threw the interception past Nick Harbor to the waiting hands of Damani Jackson in the end zone, and he's got a guy about to be right in his face as he's getting set to uncork and throw this ball. So maybe he didn't see the guy out in the flat. I don't know, and that's either, I think it's Gage Larvadain or Dre Jacobs, one of those. Couldn't really tell from watching it on the replay, but maybe he didn't see that guy, didn't go through the progression there, or just had the determination to uncork that throw and heave it over the end zone. Regardless, it was the mistake was made there. Obviously, it ended up being the interception at the end of the game, but there's so much going on with this offense. It's hard to just point at one thing and say, fix this, and everything else falls in line.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, Tyler, I think because of so much that's still kind of developing with that offense, I think it is a little bit of sensory overload for Sellers. I mean, we talk about this, I think, every week, but he is he is a young quarterback, kind of still learning the ropes and everything. And I think there were a lot of plays from this weekend that showed that he's still kind of developing, especially in this offense. I think the Sellers we're going to be looking at this point next year compared to right now is going to be a completely different ball player. But I think the green quarterback that the Gamecocks still have, there were definitely plays that showed that this weekend.
Got more of you hanging on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. We'll get to you in just a moment. Again, today is Monday, so we will have Monday Night Football coming up tonight. Bills and Jets, 7:30 pregame here on the game as we wrap up another weekend of NFL action. We'll continue to react to South Carolina's loss to Alabama over the weekend, 27-25, on your Reaction Monday on the Extra Point here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro along with you here on your Reaction Monday on the game. We've had a lot of negative so far. So Billy from Blythewood weighs in and says, we're going to be just fine. They're going to learn how to win these games. LSU game and Alabama game were awesome college football games. We just didn't come out on top, but we will stay the course. Little dose of positivity on a mostly negative morning because that's how you often feel after losing a game. But Billy with a half full outlook on this team.
Yeah, and I like Billy's outlook a little bit. I mean, when you only lose by 2 points to one of the best franchises in college football, you can't be that upset. I mean, yes, they did lose, and it's still going to be a loss in their schedule, but you can't be upset with that outcome, and it really came down to the wire.
And that's because of the belief that you were in the game and the ability that there was a pathway to win the game. Because, again, when you get just beat handily by a team like Ole Miss last week, you just kind of throw up your hands and say, well, these weren't good enough. And in this game, you look back on specific points and say, man, if they didn't do this, if they didn't turn the ball over here, if they didn't do this, didn't do that, then you win the game. Like, those are the ones that I think do kind of hurt the worst because you know what the blueprint was to get there. You just could not get there for whatever reason. And unfortunately for South Carolina, this is a problem that happens a lot where, man, you are in a game with a really good team and you just can't close.
I just think a lot of people were not thinking it would come down to maybe a handful of plays between the difference between winning and losing to Alabama. I think they maybe looked at it like, okay, this was just going to be the blowout of the year. At least we get to play Bama. We could say, oh, we have bragging rights. We were able to go to Tuscaloosa. But, I mean, it was a little bit of a different story than that, obviously, as we saw.
Let's get another call in here. Thomas has been holding on for a bit. Thomas, appreciate your patience. What is on your mind today?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I'm very proud of those young men, how they fought in battle and gave their all, and we just come up a tad bit short, but I think they gained a lot of confidence. And I think one gentleman, he hit the nail on the head, that they just got to help out the young quarterback there a little bit with our play calling there. I'm not beating up on the play calling. I would have liked to seen one play call right there at the end because our line was not being able to hold up very well. The screen, because Alabama was selling all out after Sellers. I think a screen play would have put us in field goal position. If we'd have made it, I don't know, but I think that was the one play that we missed right there at the end. And I hang up and listen.
Yeah, appreciate the call there, Thomas. And look, play calling is always going to be a debate. Each and every week, and whether they told Sellers he had to throw it to Harbor on that deep route, and there was a miscommunication on where Harbor was supposed to be, or if he had the option to throw it, to check it down to Jacobs or whoever that was, sit down there in the flat. We don't know the full context and story on that, at this point in time, but it's something you're going to look back on and wonder what could have been, because there was a path there for South Carolina to at least get themselves with a chance to kick field goal, and that doesn't mean Herrera's going to make it, because he missed one earlier in the game. He's missed several this year. He could have missed the field goal, and they would have lost the game by the same score anyway, but you felt like you had a good chance to be in position for that to be the game ender, if possible.
And maybe that was partly why the decision to, go for the deep ball route on those type of plays was the case. Maybe they didn't feel that, taking a screen pass type of route would put them in a prime position to kick a field goal. And if they had that position, would they still convert? Maybe they were just, looking to go ahead for the win right there. But I think in this scenario, it would have kind of helped keep the momentum in South Carolina's court a little bit, while also kind of helping them slowly move the ball up and score with time winding down, rather than just kind of, forcing a deep ball play and kind of throwing the game away a little bit.
And Thomas mentioned something there at the beginning of his call that I think is important here. How do you build from this, right? Because taking a top 10 team to the limit in their house is something that should build confidence. It should be something you say, hey, we are good enough to compete at this level. Now keep doing it going forward. Because I look at the rest of the schedule. You've got A&M, you've got Missouri, you've got Clemson, you've got tough games. Vanderbilt looks like a tougher game now. And the problem is, I don't know what this team's going to be week to week. because one week they look like they can go out there and beat anybody in the world, and the next week they look like they don't belong in the SEC. Like, I don't know which team we're going to get on a week-to-week basis, and that's what scares me, because I want to say, well, yeah, they should definitely be able to beat Vanderbilt. They should definitely be able to beat Missouri and so on and so forth. But I don't know which version of this team is going to show up on those given weeks.
And I know you and Jack were kind of talking about, they came into this game against Alabama, in the way they did, because they had that fire lit under their bellies because of, losing to Ole Miss in the way they did. What would have happened if they beat Ole Miss 27-3? Would they have came into this game with that same fire under their belly? Like, coming into this guns blazing, ready to, take one of the top 10 teams in the country to their absolute limit in their house? I don't know.
Yeah. And that's the dichotomy of this team, because you don't look good in week number 1 against Old Dominion. You bludgeon Kentucky in week number 2. You play this fantastic back and forth game between LSU and come up just short in that one. You bludgeon Akron the way that you're supposed to bludgeon Akron. You don't look like you showed up for the Ole Miss game, and then you take Alabama to the limit. Like it's just such a mixed bag. If you told me that this weekend against Oklahoma, they're going to go out there and beat them by 3 touchdowns, okay, I believe that. If you told me they're going to lose by 4 points, 10-6, I could believe that too. Like, I don't know what this team is week to week.
All I know is the Gamecocks fan base is definitely a lot happier than the Crimson Tide fan base right now, because, I don't know about you, but at least I can't imagine that any Alabama fan has felt this uneasy or some type of way about their team, maybe trying to get over the hump in terms of, playing teams like USC like this in years past.
The way they've played these past really 2.5 weeks, if you count the second half against Georgia, it's unacceptable. Because, and look, Alabama was not, devoid of playing tight games. They'd get in there and play a 7 to 14 point game against Arkansas or whatever and not look efficient and crisp, but the next week they come back and blow the doors off someone. So to go from losing to Vanderbilt to playing a not overly efficient game against South Carolina and having to barely hold on to win against an unranked team, like, this is uncharted territory for them. They're not feeling comfortable. They may be as unhappy about the win as South Carolina is about the loss coming away from Saturday.
And, that also could be, new head coach, obviously new offensive pieces. Jada Milroe's been kind of wishy-washy, especially he was against South Carolina, but when you also have a great defense like that, it's going to set you up for a game like that any day.
When you go from the greatest coach in the history of this game to a guy in Kalen DeBoer that is a winner and has won everywhere he's been, but he's not Nick Saban. Like, you're going to have some differences, and they are taking their lumps with that right now. They're still a one-loss team. They're still in the top 10. All their goals are still ahead of him, but there's uneasiness in Tuscaloosa right now.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, I had a friend of mine who was rooting for Bama this weekend, and she was very uneasy with how the outcome of the game was unfolding up until about that fumble with roughly 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I'm sure she was not the only one there. We will take a look around what else happened in college football over the weekend, as it was a wild, wild day on Saturday. That's coming up next. It is your Reaction Monday on the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro here on The Game.
down here at the bottom for Jeremiah Smith.
3rd and 20. Howard, a lot of time coming off. Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it.
Oh, my goodness.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon. They storm the field at Autzen, and the Ducks win this bout 32-31.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point Tyler Head and Sam Spiro along with you on your Reaction Monday. Let's take a look around what happened around the world of college football as we do have our Who Sprung a Leak segment. And it's not a team, but an individual player. Will Howard, on the final play of the game against Oregon, scrambles, wasting the final seconds of the game, does not get down in time, can't call a timeout, and Ohio State walks out of Autzen Stadium with a 32-31 loss to the Oregon Ducks in what might be game of the year. I'm debating between that and what happened with Georgia and Alabama the other week, but this game certainly lived up to the billing.
It definitely lived up to the hype, and it's interesting that you brought up this play from Howard. When I was kind of watching it, it was almost kind of reminiscent of that NFC Championship game where Dak Prescott's kind of just like standing there and he kind of just like goes, it almost kind of looks like he kind of just gives up and like goes down on the play. It kind of looked like he was doing, I don't want to say Howard was giving up on the play, but it kind of just looked like he was looking around like at somebody, hey, what should I do, you know?
Well, he was trying to get them in field goal range and didn't have any options to throw, so he took off and ran, and they did have one timeout. The problem was he took too long to slide. Now, I'm watching it here, or I'm trying to watch it here. So he's evaluating, looks, doesn't see what he wants, takes off and runs. He takes off and runs with about 3 seconds left, and as he's starting his slide, there was 1 second left on the clock, and like the play does not end until he comes to a stop. So by the time he slides and looks around, the game's over.
Right.
And they were at the 38-yard line when this play started. I mean, they could have tried a field goal from that long. That's not certainly advantageous. But, you know, if he slides 2 seconds sooner at like the 30 or 32, then you're at least setting up for a decent shot at a field goal.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking like 3 seconds left. You don't really necessarily, well, yeah, if they had a timeout left, that's a great opportunity. But I mean, I'm thinking it like he didn't even have time to call the timeout. I would just be booking it to the end zone at that point.
Well, he didn't have a path to the end zone, and what he was trying to do was get down to call the timeout, because that's essentially what they're setting up for, because he was looking to see if he could get somebody on the sidelines to get out of bounds, stop the clock, and set them up in better range. So didn't see anybody decides to cut and run. He just, I guess, wasn't paying attention to the clock and see how much time was left, because by the time he slides and the play is over, there's no time left.
Well, my cousin goes to Ohio State, and I know she was probably very unhappy to watch the end of that game.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, Ohio State played a really good game. Oregon played a really good game. This is number 2 versus number 3, and they played like at a back-and-forth game. I mean, both teams had over 450 yards through the air. Just a really well-played game. Only one turnover by both sides. That was by Ohio State when they lost a fumble. Like just a high-level game between two high-level teams in college football.
Yeah, and I think even when you lose, even a loss in the loss column for Ohio after this, I think, you know, if they continue to push through the rest of their season, you know, this loss isn't really going to hurt them. It's not really going to sting them, because when you lose to another high-powered team like that, it doesn't necessarily hold you back from college football playoff.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about this new era of the college football playoff with 12 teams. We could see this game 2 more times. Because these teams, if they continue to play at the level we think they're going to continue to play at, they can be a rematch in Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship game. And if the brackets work out the same way, they could end up playing each other in the playoff in a quarterfinal, semifinal, or the national championship. A lot of possibilities there. So this may not be the last time we see the Buckeyes and Ducks play this year.
You know, given how wide open kind of just the landscape of college football as a whole kind of is this year especially, I think just it's a lot different than how years past have kind of shaped up. I think that could be a great matchup a lot of people could look forward to, and especially if you have 3 total matchups at the end of the season, then you can really debate, especially if these teams go on those runs, you know, which squad was better, because you have really, you know, 3 games to compare them to.
And again, a lot of football to be played between now and then, but it may not be the last time we see Oregon and Ohio State playing each other. Going to the SEC, this was a highly anticipated matchup. Get cut number 33 here, Ed, down in Baton Rouge this past weekend.
Tyron Lacey, 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 Tyron Lacey. Okay, never mind. Our system is acting up here, but LSU pulls off the overtime victory over Ole Miss 29-26 as LSU improves 5-1 on the year. Ole Miss drops 5-2, much like Oregon and Ohio State. Just a fantastic back-and-forth game between two high-level teams. And obviously LSU comes out with the win. And now Ole Miss has lost 2 out of their last 3 games in what is regarded as one of the most talented rosters in all of college football.
Yeah, Jackson Dart also had a pretty solid game. I thought it was a pretty good quarterback duel, especially a good SEC quarterback duel. But I do think it was interesting kind of how LSU snuck their way into, winning that overtime game. It kind of seemed like towards the end of the game, Ole Miss, kind of was going to get the last laugh. But I don't know. LSU was sneaky there at the end.
Yeah, LSU making the comeback. Garrett Nussmeier getting the touchdown there in the last couple of seconds of the of the fourth quarter to help them make it into overtime. And then the one play in overtime where he was able to find Kyron Lacey in the end zone for that touchdown to end up sealing that game there. And LSU is a sneaky team. Like nobody's talking a whole lot about them. We obviously focused on them a little bit because they came to South Carolina a couple weeks ago. But again, they're 5-1. They are in position right now in the driver's seat. Their only loss is out of conference to Southern Carolina week number 1. This is a team that I know the focus is Georgia and Texas and all that at the top of the SEC, Alabama as well. But LSU has all their goals in front of them to still be in the driver's seat to win the SEC.
Yeah, and I think this game clearly showed, their offense is the least of their problems. I mean, offensively, they're capable of scoring. They're capable of driving down the field. They're capable of, making plays 20-plus yards out. But I think it's going to be how this defense holds on. I mean, we've seen multiple SEC teams give up 30-plus points to this, or score 30-plus points, on this team. So I think it's going to be dependent on how, they hold on defensively. Because clearly they were able to do that in this game, and they picked up a big win against Ole Miss.
Absolutely. And then the number 1 team in the country, Texas, in the Red River Shootout game, dismantling Oklahoma 34-3. This is a game that got off to a slow start. Quinn Ewers throwing the interception early. Oklahoma leading the game at 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. But when Texas finally got in gear, they put a whooping on the Oklahoma Sooners and continue on a perfect season so far.
Yeah, that was the best. I think that was probably one of the best outcomes of a game that Quinn Ewers could have had, returning from. I think he was out 2 games.
Yeah.
Especially, he's kind of got that pressure coming in. They got a pretty developed quarterback room over there. So, of course, it was kind of interesting. It was almost kind of nice to see him come into the game a little bit rusty because it showed, he's a little bit human. But, I mean, it was maybe a quarter of rusty football. And then by halftime, they kind of looked like the Texas we've kind of seen. And by the end of the game, it was like, this is a rivalry game.
It is. And I pose that possibility going into the weekend that, yes, Texas is the much better team on paper, but as we've seen in years past, the prior 10 matchups between these two teams, the lower ranked or unranked team had won that game. So sometimes you throw records out the door when it comes to rivalry games because anything can happen. This Oklahoma team is just not nearly on the same level as Texas. I know they're only 4-2, but their offensive line's abysmal. Michael Hawkins is better than Jackson Arnold, but not that much better. They didn't have Deion Burks for the second week in a row. Defense is great, and defense will keep them in a lot of these games, but like they did against Tennessee a couple weeks ago, but they just don't have anything on offense that can generate enough points to win any kind of high-scoring game.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like they're an offensive firepower, or at least a force to be reckoned with on that side of the ball, at least in the SEC.
Which, on the flip side of things, after having 2 teams that are coming off of upsets these past 2 weeks, South Carolina is getting a team in Oklahoma that's coming off of a pretty thumping loss. So we'll see how that fares in Norman coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm very happy to see how our defense faces up against that offense.
We'll see what happens. Again, that game coming up this weekend. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point, look around
the weird things that happen around college football this year, a couple of really interesting things that took place. Reminder, coming up tomorrow at 1 o'clock, as always on Tuesday of game week, is Shane Beamer's weekly pressers. He'll put some final thoughts in the Alabama game and slowly start to turn the attention to Oklahoma coming up on Saturday. This is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro on your Reaction Monday here on The Game.
After reviewing the
You're gonna have to reset it. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro along with you here on your Reaction Monday on The Game. Time to take a look around what happened in the world of college football, the weird things that is from over this past weekend. as I always like to celebrate the oddities that do happen around this great sport that we all know and love. I want to start off with this that happened in the Iowa-Michigan game, which it's still funny to say that is a Big Ten conference game. So Washington kicks a field goal in this game to make it, let's see here, make it 17-10 at that point in time. The problem was the kick went over the top of the upright, and Iowa challenged the play, or Iowa asked for the play to be reviewed, to which the official there said the play cannot be reviewed, even though they went back and reviewed it.
Right.
You following all that?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of why I was confused watching the clip. I was like, you're saying a clip you reviewed is unreviewable. So if it's unreviewable, how did you review it?
So because essentially Iowa challenged it, they went through the whole process of reviewing it, and then they came out and said, you can't challenge it. They didn't give Iowa their time, or no, they took the timeout away from Iowa, which is all the more confusing. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I was very confused too. I mean, more just because either just say, yes or no, not we can't look at this and that's it, and we're going to charge you with the timeout. It kind of seemed to at least give them the timeout back. It was just the whole thing was kind of weird. You're saying it's an unreviewable play for a play you can't look at a play you looked at. Was how I kind of heard that, and I was just like, okay, my brain hurts now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't expect officials to be perfect at their jobs. That was just another situation of how did we get here?
How did we get there?
I don't know. Elsewhere in college football, Brent Venables apparently said before the Red River game on Saturday that if he won, he would try a Fletcher's corn dog for the first time because, of course, they're playing at the Texas State Fair. So, the fair is happening around the Cotton Bowl while this game is happening. You know what Steve Sarkisian walked into the postgame press conference with after beating Oklahoma?
With a corn dog.
A Fletcher's corn dog. I love the pettiness. I love the rivalry aspect of this. You don't have to like Steve Sarkisian to appreciate that kind of thing, because if another coach gives you that kind of ammo, use it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the best parts about college football, and I think we were seeing it last week with the blanket. I forget exactly what it was, but we were talking about.
Yeah, that was with the Texas A&M DB that sent Theo Weiss the blanket and said, get used to this, and he actually kind of lived up to it.
Yeah, I don't know. Funny stories like that, or just kind of like anecdotal pieces like that, you remember for a while, and it brings you back kind of to that place. So I think it was cool he showed up with he at least got to go to the Texas State Fair.
That's true. Let's go to Oregon and Ohio State. Early in the second quarter, after Oregon had just scored, they're kicking off from midfield after a penalty on Ohio State after the score there. I don't know if this is intentional or not. Their kicker just literally hit a missile at one of the upbacks on the kick return team and just literally hit him with the ball, and it had not gone 10 yards at that point in time, but it becomes a fumble, a free ball at that point in time, to which Oregon recovers for a pseudo onside kick.
It was one of the best special teams plays I've seen orchestrated in a college game. When I saw it, we were talking about this during the break, but it reminded me of when in basketball games, somebody's trying to take a free throw, but they intentionally hit the rim to get the clock going because they need the 2 points. But anyway, I just thought it was such a, whether it was on purpose or not, it was a genius play. It was just a genius play.
Because I'm looking at the replay and the force that he kicks it with, because again, they're kicking off from midfield. So what you're trying to do there is, because you can always just kick it in the end zone for a touchback, but you're trying to pin Ohio State deep. So it almost looks like with the force that he kicked it with, like he's trying to squib it to just get a roller to try and pin Ohio State inside their 20, but literally just nails the guy on the return team in the chest, and it bounces off him, and then Ohio State recovers it.
Yeah, I think he might have squibbed it a bit too high, so instead of rolling on the ground, it actually got a little bit of air, but still had that kind of oomph that it needs to, be an onside kick. But I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better. I mean, it was a Pat McAfee punt, to say the least.
And the final one here. So Georgia played Mississippi State on Saturday, and at halftime of this game, they were shooting a scene for this Hulu series, Chad Powers, and I pulled up the description of it. It is a comedy that follows a disgraced college quarterback as he walks on to a struggling Southern football team. So, as you'll often do with movies, you will shoot a football scene at an actual football game so you can get the crowd and the environment and all that kind of stuff. So, at like halftime of the Georgia game, this random team runs out of the tunnel. And I don't think they privied the crowd to what was happening here, right? I don't know if they announced, hey, we're shooting a movie or whatever. From what I heard about this, they did not. They just see this random team that's not Mississippi State or Georgia running out of the tunnel, and the fans in Athens booed them relentlessly because they see another team. They're like, oh, I guess we should boo these guys. So I appreciate having your head on a swivel as a crowd for just going ahead and booing the team you don't know who they are.
Yeah, that I think makes it even more funny, but do you think if there were like cue cards out that said like they were actors, people would have like cheered and gone against their script?
One person here saying the PA announcer did make reference to it beforehand, so I guess they were privy to it a little bit, but still, that's funny just naturally to boo whoever this is.
Well, I figured even if they didn't know who it was, that would have made the best organic reaction from the crowd ever, and maybe that's why the boos would have been all the more, hilarious, really.
There was some movie a couple years ago, and I forget what it was, but they filmed it in front of some kind of live audience. I forget what sporting event it was, and they announced whoever the person was from being from a foreign country, and the fans just naturally booed them, and that got involved in the movie. I forget what movie it was. If you remember, let me know, 803-404-6100. But heads up crowd, they're just booing the team that is the opposition in whatever context this is.
Yeah, no, it was very funny. But I'm looking forward to seeing the actual clip on the show so I can go, oh, yeah, it's from that time.
I'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here in Reaction Monday on the game. 11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you. Of course, looking back on what happened over the weekend between South Carolina and Alabama. Guys, we didn't have the highest expectations going into this game given what we saw the week prior with South Carolina and Ole Miss, but as this team tends to do, just when you start to doubt them, they give you a really good game, unfortunately coming up a little bit short, falling 27-25 to Alabama on Saturday.
Yeah, I did have a 7-point loss. So.
Okay, well, you had more belief than most of us.
Well, I just have seen the roller coaster. Like True. It's not always easy to pick out which part of the roller coaster you're on, but there is evidence. Generally, after a showing like last week, they find a way to bounce back and play better. Like we've seen that time and time again. Alabama looked mortal. This is something Chris and I talked about on the podcast this morning. I mean, Carolina belonged on the field with those guys. Like that was not a fluky game. Like there were some crazy things that happened, but it just in terms of, I thought the speed, the athleticism, watching the two teams go to battle, it wasn't that far off, man. Milroe, I mean, for all the talk, which we may get into, of some of the takes people have had on Lenora Sellers, I mean, did y'all watch Milroe play? Like, Milroe looked completely human. And you're talking about a redshirt freshman on the road in Sellers who, yeah, we'll get into the turnovers, but Milroe had turnovers as well. Like, they looked similar, in my opinion. So, once again, and I'll go back to what we said on the pod, two things can be true at once. Part of it is it's okay to be proud with the way Carolina competed. Like, they competed their tails off. They were right there. They belonged on the field. I think you lined it up 10 times. Carolina's right there. Also, it's okay to point out, once again, some big mistakes that kept Carolina. Like, you're going to be in games like this, honestly. Like, this is the new college football, at least currently. Everybody, it's kind of like the NFL. You're going to be in tight games. It's always going to be about who makes less mistakes or more mistakes, who has turnovers, who scores touchdowns instead of field goals. That really wasn't maybe a factor in this game, but in a lot of games, those are the things they're going to come down to because each side has the ability to stay in a game.
Yeah, I think if you've got, now we're halfway through the season now, the regular season for South Carolina. And so there's always a temptation after every week to make a definitive statement on a team. Last week, you lose to Ole Miss. Wasn't particularly close or competitive after a certain point in the game, fairly early. If you're making a grand statement, a bold statement about a team, I think you can't do that. What we know about this team and this year is that it's hard to tell week to week. I mean, all the games that we saw when we got back from the game in Tuscaloosa, we sat around and watched football all night, and I was stressed out flipping between the games.
It's a lot to choose from. Yep.
There's 5 games that are fourth quarter games. 2 of them went into overtime. There was just crazy games. Even like Purdue, Illinois was a crazy game, right? Went into overtime. Then the SEC slate that you got that night, a bunch of phenomenal games. And you start looking at, okay, this team lost to this team, and this team beat this team, and you just can't keep track of it anymore, hardly. All the teams are pretty close. And so I think after the Ole Miss game, this is the point I'm trying to get at here, is a lot of people, well, they're going to get run off the field by Bama. Or, well, this team can't win this many games. I think now that we're halfway through the season, we've actually seen enough that the Ole Miss game was probably the outlier for this team. Not to say that, South Carolina could go on the road at Oklahoma or to Clemson later this year, or, at home against A&M and turn the ball over 3 or 4 times and shoot themselves in the foot and could take a loss like that. But what we've seen is generally much more competitive. We've seen them beat Kentucky handily on the road, and we've seen them lose a couple very close games to LSU and Bama. That's one thing we know, that generally this team is going to be able to compete against anybody. We also know that this team has not been able to maximize its full potential I think because of the mistakes, the turnovers that Wes referenced. So can that part get better? So far, it's remained an issue. Does that mean it remains an issue for the back half of the season? Does that mean it gets a little better or a lot better? I don't know if we can answer that. We know it's been a theme so far. There's no doubt about that.
And we'll start with that. And again, we always like to reference, what Cole Kublik has to say in his weekly recap of all the teams that played in the SEC. And, he gave a good synopsis of South Carolina, this morning with his tweet. And the last sentence he had there was just flags and turnovers hurt too much, which once again was the case this week. And now the sheer number of penalties was certainly not on par with what it's been so far this year. But I think about the holding penalty on Kamar Bell that ended up setting up the long field goal that Alex Ferreira ended up missing. Obviously the turnovers, you have Sellers putting the ball on the ground a couple times, losing 2 of those, and of course the interception at the end of the game, and ultimately not being able to capitalize on the takeaways that you had against Alabama, minus the one that you got the field goal on. So it's those kind of things that you look back on in a game like this and wonder what could have been.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think Cole nailed it again. He normally does. He has the context of watching every single game in the SEC and provides some of that context to you. And so I think for Carolina, like it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to also kind of feel like, all right, we're right there. Like I think both of those takes are maybe equally accurate. And, I think going into this game, a lot of people would have maybe not taken a 2-point loss, but if you said, hey, Carolina's going to go down there, battle their tail off, come up just short, would you take that after what you sat through last week? And some people may have said yes, but then once you get there and you have the opportunity, you want to go win the thing. And so they obviously did not make the plays to go win the thing. And, yeah, that's frustrating, I think. And I'll say this, no one player cost South Carolina this game. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And, I think when you look at Sellers, like, yeah, we can talk about the mistakes. He did have mistakes like every quarterback. But I think also he made a ton of plays in this game that kept you in the game, that put you in a position to win the game. And I don't really believe in taking like screenshots or pictures of live football plays and being like, oh, you missed a receiver here. What were you looking at? What were you thinking? How did you do this? Like, go watch some NFL. Pick out whoever you think the best quarterback is in the game, and you can do the same exact thing. In any game of football that's ever been played in the history of football, you can find an example of a quarterback not seeing an open receiver. So it's very easy to be like, yeah, you missed a guy here, missed a guy there, but that's football. That's the game. You have 5 eligible receivers on any given play, and you have to find them before these 300-pound people hit you. So that ain't easy. So I think there has to be a little perspective there, like the Twitter conversation, the X conversation. Like it's fun because it can give you context. Like, hey, here's a missed opportunity, but Milroe missed some opportunities too. Every quarterback does. So I think we got to remember this guy's a redshirt freshman. He's in, what is his 5th game, but not really. And yeah, there's context and perspective to everything.
I think to go back to your 2 things could be true. I mean, college football, as we know, is not a very nuanced thing in terms of discussion. I mean, fandom is not very nuanced. It's often black and white. It should be a little bit more nuanced, things like this. You can black and white certain things. At the end of the year, South Carolina is going to win a certain number of games and lose a certain number of games. And that is ultimately how you're judged. At the end of the year, it's not going to be if this or that. No, you're going to be somewhere between, at this point, 3-9 or 9-3. You're going to be one of those 2 or somewhere in between. And that's how it'll be judged, and that's the way it should be. But when you're talking about Sellers, I don't know what the deal is as far as why this has happened. Maybe it's because it's quarterback. Maybe it's because people know how talented he is. It's okay to point out, hey, here's a mistake. Here's a mistake. But the conversation's gone too far. I've seen too much. He's not an SEC quarterback. By the way, we saw that in like week 3.
We saw it after week 1.
Yeah, week 1. Yeah, we did. We saw it.
Literally.
Literally, yeah. I've seen he's not a real quarterback. He's just an athlete. Like, some of the stuff that's being said is frankly, trying to not get myself in trouble with what it's just not intelligent.
Yeah.
It's nonsense, basically.
About your own player.
About your own player. And it's okay to be frustrated with the mistakes, but to act like he can improve or he hasn't already improved in many other areas from game 1 to game 6, it's missing all the content. It's too much emotion, We see the same thing we had somebody out on our podcast today. Alex Herrera can't hit a field goal over 30 yards. It's like, well, if I look at the statistics and watch the games, he's hit 4 between 40 and 49 yards, So I think people just miss context and they'll just say things out of frustration. Just take a step back, take a look at it. You can be frustrated about losing. You can be frustrated about some of the mistakes. Don't bury a guy's entire season or career as a redshirt freshman because of mistakes that he's made.
I want to keep the Sellers conversation going. We'll also hear Beamer's thoughts on how he thought Sellers Day was coming up as we continue to unpack South Carolina's loss to Alabama on the road this past weekend on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Got a read here, Tyler?
Yeah.
All right, I don't think y'all are ready for this conversation yet, but guess what? You very soon are going to have to start buying Christmas gifts. And I know it's hard to buy for some people in your life. How about getting something for them unique from our friends over at Goal Line Framing and gifting them a custom framing job on pretty much anything they have, like original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Of course, you sometimes have mid-year graduates. Maybe you want to gift them a diploma custom frame as well. You can go ahead and set that up with our friends over at Goal Line Framing by calling 803-739-1337. They've been in business for over 20 years, so you're going to be taken great care of, just like they take great care of us every time we broadcast live from there over at 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, they've got art gallery, home decor, furniture, gift items, and some awesome hats as well. Check them out. Again, that phone number for Goal Line Framing, 803-739-1337.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point, Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. What am I thinking? Presented by Firehouse Subs. Monday mornings, right? Anyway, it is a Reaction Monday, too.
It's 2 in a row.
2 in a row. Sorry. It happens.
He blamed you not being here, by the way, on Friday.
Well, it threw off the... We'll see, because when I say the names in order, it keeps everything in rhythm.
Tyler, I'm telling you what, man. You keep making these mistakes. I don't really like, I'm gonna write off your entire career or the rest of your year.
Good luck
What
with
are you,
that.
the Oklahoma offensive coordinator?
I guess so. Either way, it is a Reaction Monday. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse
There it
Subs.
is.
There we go. Let's hear.
We get the Firehouse Subs part right every time. We get that part every time.
That's right. Anyways, continuing the conversation about Lenore Sellers, let's hear what Coach Beamer had to say after the game on Saturday about the way Sellers performed against Alabama.
Yeah, he's a warrior. Proud of him. He continues to get better each and every week. To come on the road, 23 of 31, 238 yards, and ran the ball well. I thought he did enough for us to win the football game, and he'll continue to get better. I think he'll tell you we got to be ready to, can't hang onto the ball quite too long. I thought there were a couple times today where we maybe hung onto the ball a little bit too long, but he gave us a chance, and to go on the road in front of 100,000 and basically execute two-minute drives right there at the end of the game. We didn't finish the last one, I know, but to have the ball moving and operate efficiently, he continues to get better.
One of the keys going into the game was Lenore Sellers is going to have to go out there and have a career type of day, because that's what it takes to beat Alabama, much like Diego Pavia did the week before. As Beamer mentioned, went 23 of 31 for 238 yards and 2 touchdowns. Completed almost 75% of his passes. All those the best marks that he's had so far this year. The other side of things, did turn the ball over 3 times, 2 fumbles, had the 1 interception as well. He does hold on to the ball too long, and that's been a consistent problem this year. So there was plenty of good. There's also some bad mixed in there as well. And again, it's a learning process. You don't expect him to go out there and play perfectly, but there were things that he did to help them win the game. There were things that he did to help them lose the game as well.
Yeah, I think when you play a young quarterback, and everybody wants people to play their young quarterback. Like, how many times we had the conversation about there's maybe an older, maybe not quite as talented, but more experienced quarterback, and everybody's just saying, man, play this young guy. Play the young guy. He's clearly the most talented. Play the young guy. And it's maybe one of those, be careful what you wish for if you're going to not be willing to live with the mistakes of playing a young guy. And I still think the missed time has been pretty impactful as far as his production and his progress, I should say, really. So for me, I think this is what happens when a redshirt freshman quarterback goes on the road playing at Alabama. Like Beamer said, 100,000 people. And you hope you have enough ups to sort of, I guess, outweigh the bad. And I think if you want to get like nitpicky and go through the turnovers, they were all tough plays. I think the one that really probably, if you're a coach, hurts the most is the one on the exchange with Rocket. And I think with a young player who does have the ability to extend plays, you're walking a very fine line in terms of holding on to the ball. How many times did you hold on to the ball and you're able to make a big play or make it, not even a big play, just you sort of shoot the ball out to Rocket in the flat and you say, hey, we're now in 2nd and 4 instead of 2nd and 10. How many times did you take off running? I mean, you almost, again, almost probably a big word for Carolina right now. You almost had maybe the play of the season to this point on the scramble play where Larverdane gets behind the defense. And so that's a tough line to walk for a young player. I think you can live with those type plays. Was his arm going forward or not? Like those are just plays that when you get hit in college football, sometimes stuff is going to happen. We saw Milroe turn the ball over as well. I think it's the the ones that you kind of feel like are a little bit unforced, and not a little bit unforced, that was unforced, frankly, like the zone read or the handoff there. Those are the ones I think that hurt the most, especially considering you had just gotten a huge play. Both of those, when guys throw interceptions at the end of a game too, I don't know, man. Like you're trying to make something happen. But both of the fumbles came after South Carolina had big plays of their own on defense. And so I think to not be able to take advantage of those situations was clearly costly. But I go back to, guys, we can have a conversation. We're doing it right now. You can have a respectful conversation about where Sellers is as a player, about his progress as a young quarterback, without bashing the kid and, just being completely over the top about somebody who suits up in your team's colors and goes about things in the right way, works his tail off, has never been an embarrassment to your university, does everything right. So it is a little bit disheartening, some of the personal attacks that I've seen out there directed at specifically Lenora Sellers and Alex Herrera.
Yeah, I mean, the personal attacks are obviously ridiculous and are probably so far out of line that I don't even want to spend time, me personally, addressing them. If you've got actual football-related things, that's fine and that's fair game. The trend that I've seen for those who may have some legitimate but still over-the-top thoughts on Sellers that have maybe taken those even too far are you're completely, I think, eliminating the possibility that he could get better, which seems silly. We have a great recent example of Xavier Legette, who just caught a touchdown pass for the Panthers again yesterday. They're bad, but he's coming along. He got to ride Dollar Beal again. It took him 4 years. Now, is that a little more uncommon? Yeah. But he ended up as a first-round pick. And, man, let me tell you, I can't tell you how many people wrote Xavier Legette off. Gamecock fans. Remember he had that rough game against SC State? Guy shouldn't even be on the roster. Should never see the field again. Now people love him, right? Have some perspective. Lenora Sellers is going to get better. At some point, right now, guys, the biggest problem really are the fumbles. Does he hold on to the ball a little bit too long? Yeah, that's typical of a young quarterback. Sometimes he's held on to it for a while and thrown a touchdown pass like the one to Mazia Bennett. That took a little extra time. He got good protection. He threw it. Sometimes he's held on to it a little bit too long, but he can get out of it. There's some obvious sacks that most people are sacked. He gets out of it. So there's a little trade-off right now. At some point, he'll get better with the fumbles. You look at his numbers. He has 4 picks. That's not great. Certainly not terrible for a first-year player in the situations he's been in. He's not playing Wake Forest and, name your other team. I don't want to offend anybody. He's playing Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Kentucky, right? This is an extremely difficult schedule. That's really the one issue. It's not the only thing, but the main thing is the fumbles. He will clean those up. I think he'll clean them up. I think he'll probably do it this season.
And it is kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, like you said, because there's the element of holding onto the ball too long, but also the element of knowing when to take sacks as well. And that's something he alluded to after the game. I think about the fumble where he's kind of just flinging it up as he's going to the ground. Like, that's a situation where you should probably just end up taking the sack there because, unfortunately, the call on the field ended up standing. And it could have been an incomplete pass, sure. Ends up getting called a fumble and stands the same way. So, again, it's one of those elements. I equated it to, when talking to Jack earlier, when you're, a 16-year-old kid driving for the first time and your dad or whoever tells you, hey, you don't know what you don't know until you go out there and experience it yourself. That's essentially what he's doing, learning week by week in the SEC. Again, he made a lot of great plays that could have been potential ones to set them up to win the game, but also made some mistakes that ended up costing them. So it's a lot of both as you're learning and as a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, he did make a lot of plays, and I think if you go back and rewatch the game, man, none of this stuff is like easy by any means. Like, and I think it's it is easy to sit at home and watch the game and enjoy the game, but when you're in the emotion of the game, be like, oh, you missed that throw, or what are you doing there? But then when you go back and rewatch the game, like for example, the 2-point conversion attempt late in the game for South Carolina. I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm going, oh, man, he missed him. Like, what happened? And is it just a bad throw? And you say, all right, it's a pretty good play call. Like, they had a guy open. The Sellers want that throw back? Absolutely. I think he probably makes that throw most of the time. But then when you go back and look at the context of the entire play, you go, well, there's a free rusher who is bearing down on him and hits him the exact split second after he delivers the ball. Completely clean play. But point being, it's a lot harder to make that throw when you have a defensive end or linebacker about to hit you and you're basically throwing over him, then it looks like in that first view you see where all you see is an open receiver and then the ball going over his head. And you're going, what happened? How did you not make that throw? Well, there's context to everything that happens. And one of the beauties of football, we talk about rush and cover all the time. Pass rush is connected to your defensive backfield. And so I do think to really get an idea of what's happening, go back, rewatch the game, take out the emotion, and you will have a different, I think, acknowledgement and a different appreciation for what it takes to play quarterback.
Plenty of ups and downs with the offense, but the defense once again flexed its muscle on Saturday. We'll dive into that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Your reaction Monday here on the game.
All right, guys. Another one of our outstanding partners here on the game is our friends over at Integrated Media. Michael, Nathan, their entire crew. They've been out to my home. They've been out to Wes's, and as you probably heard earlier, Grayson Griner. So many others that they've helped around the Midlands. Home owners, business owners, they can take care of all of your audio-visual needs. Turn your home or business into a smart home or business where you can control all your lights, devices, thermostat, security and cameras, alarms, everything from the touch of a button on your smartphone. IntegratedMediaInc.com or give them a call. 803-948-8327. Everything from as simple as mounting a television, sourcing the equipment for you, to complete smart home systems. They can do it all for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com or give Michael, Nathan, and the team at Integrated Media a call at 803-948-8327. Hey, Tyler. Shu has said that on YouTube he can't hear me on this mic. So I tried to switch to this one, but then it wasn't coming across anything.
Okay.
Just that why.
Let me go look in there. See what's up.
Shu, for some reason, is a big YouTube watcher.
Alright. Listener.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Wants to throw it. He's under some pressure going right side. Carolina's got it. That's got to be intentional grounding in the end zone. That's
it's got to be that.
Kyle Kennard. Oh, there's the flag.
Already.
Oh, yes.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you. That was the call on Saturday as Kyle Kennard forcing the intentional grounding in the end zone to lead to the safety to make it a 14-9 game there in the second quarter. One of many, many plays that Kyle Kennard made on Saturday. 2 sacks on the day, 3 tackles for losses, and 7 total tackles on the game as he continued to put pressure on Jalen Milroe the entire game.
He's been special, and I think another checkbox for our guy Sterling Lucas, man. I mean, we already knew he was a good developer of talent, but when you look at the recruiting he's done, you look at the fact that Kennard, he was productive at Georgia Tech, but it was not like this, man. He, and if you listen to the broadcast, like they were singing his praises from the very beginning. And sort of had him as one of the guys they highlighted and focused on. Like, hey, you need to know this guy's name. And then, I mean, he delivered. The entire D-line delivered as well. I think you got some guys on that defense. Honestly, if you're playing as well as they are, you're good on all 3 levels of the defense. So you got some guys that are being overshadowed a little bit by the play of some of the superstars on this defense. But Kennard right now, like you would argue, has been the biggest difference maker on this defense this season. And it's been consistent. I mean, he's gotten the sacks, like he's gotten the production to go along with it. But, I mean, how many other times has he been in the backfield and is causing chaos that does not result in a sack as well? Chris and I were talking about this earlier as well. How about the decision for Alabama at the end of the half? Like, you get your quarterback hit on first down, you get him hit on second down, and instead of just saying, hey, we're going to take this thing to halftime and regroup, I don't want to say gift because Carolina made the play to make it happen, but they did gift an opportunity for South Carolina to steal 3 points from them at the end of the half. And a big part of that was the play of this pass rush up front for Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, they were really good again. Bama's offensive line has improved. Jalen Milroe's a very mobile quarterback. He did have a couple rush touchdowns, but, they weren't the huge explosive plays. They were down in the red zone, when it becomes tougher and tougher to defend something like that. Did they have some plays where they, were I think Beamer used the term too loose on the first drive in man coverage? Yeah, I mean, the thing you got to remember, this is a really good offense. So South Carolina has had the best defensive performance against Bama this year. We talked about it going into the game. If you held them to 31 or less, that was going to be the best so far. So they did that. Was it perfect? No. Was it good enough to win? Yeah, as we saw with how the game, came down to the wire there, it was good enough to win. And Kennard, I mean, I've been covering the program for 15 years now, and he's one of the best guys I've seen come through this defense. I mean, and it's easy. It's an easy pick for me. He's so impactful in the run game, even when he's not registering something in the stat book, a sack, a tackle for loss, a forced penalty. We saw all those against Bama, against an elite quarterback, against an elite offense, and an offensive-minded coaching staff with Kalen DeBoer and his guys. Even when he's not actually logging something in the stat book, he's finding a way to impact the game. So, huge get, even bigger get when you consider that he could be doing this for Missouri right now out of the transfer portal, which would be a nightmare for Gamecocks again. Just a really big get. And I think, to your point, Wes, a lot of guys playing really well on this defense, which is kind of a subplot of why people are frustrated. Because you're like, man, this defense is so good. Like, they deserve to be better than 3-3. And I agree. O.D. Fortune playing great ball. Nicky Manwari, I thought, against the run, corralling Milroe, was really good on the edge. Demetrius Knight, like, there are a bunch of guys that had really, really good performances.
Well, let's look at none other the fact that Ryan Williams was held to 32 yards and no touchdowns in this game, that their explosive play threat in every game this year was reduced to essentially nothing compared to what he's done in these other games.
And I think you can probably credit that, like their explosive ability to probably why Carolina's defenders in the secondary were probably, probably feeling things out a little bit, maybe playing a little bit loose on that first drive. And obviously it cost them a little bit, but you can kind of understand why. You're probably saying, I'm not going to let this guy run by me. And, some great adjustments, at least just in terms of that small thing, like, hey, let's force them to go over our heads. And if they hit it, they hit it. Milroe missed one early on that was a deep ball where they did, but both sides, I think there are actually a lot of similarities to the performance of both teams, honestly. Like, both teams made some mistakes. Both teams missed some opportunities. You can from Carolina's perspective, you can circle, well, hey, that Larverdam play where he gets behind the defense, if you hit that play, what happens? Well, Alabama can say the same thing. Their guy got deep on the right sideline, and Milroe just missed him. So that's football. That's the way it plays out. And, I think for this defense, like, we're just stacking evidence that, hey, they can play with about anybody. Like, they can get pressure on about anybody. And, that's been fun to see. They got, in this case, not enough help from the offense, but they got more help in terms of just staying on the field a little bit more. I mean, we haven't even talked about, man, Chris, we didn't talk about it. I really thought we had hit on everything on the podcast today. We haven't talked about yet one of the best drives in recent South Carolina memory. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, that was I feel like, y'all tell me if y'all agree or disagree. I feel like after South Carolina put that drive together, I was like, man, I think they're going to win this game.
I had the exact same thought.
Because I was like, that was as perfectly executed on all sides. And they were running the football, and it wasn't just, they gashed them for 50. It was they were running the football like 3 yards here, 8 yards there, 7 yards here. Like, it was consistent. Then you have to throw in a couple of them. You convert some third downs, good decisions. You bust out the borrowed shovel pass from Vandy against Alabama.
Perfect.
I mean, the entire drive was the best drive of the season.
16 plays, 85 yards, 8 minutes and 40 seconds off the clock to start the second half, which gave them the 19-14 lead there.
I did see somebody, people were saying, and I had the same thought, but for like, it's the best call drive Dow Loggins has had all season. And to me, it sort of reaffirmed my thought that, what makes a great play caller? When you successfully run the football.
Yeah.
Like when if you're running those inside zones and you're going for nothing, which has happened a lot this year, you're going, what are you doing running the ball up the middle? But they were just 3, 7, 6.
And you saw Rocket Sanders look like Rocket Sanders, even on some of those plays where he was hit, 2-3 yards past the line of scrimmage. He's pushing the pile an extra 3 to 4 yards, getting more out of those plays. He got some of those outside runs where he was able to get in space and make things happen. Like, you saw him, he busted off almost 5 yards a carry on Saturday. Like, you saw the best version of Rocket Sanders there.
I thought Jesse Palmer had some good points there, just saying, look, you don't have to give this guy like huge holes. Like, it doesn't have to be a lot, but you do at least need to let him get his head of steam going a little bit. Like, you've got to give him a little bit of room to sort of build up to speed, and then his power, his size sort of takes over. And we talked about that when South Carolina landed him. Like, he's a big back, but he's at his best when you can get him in space and make these safeties, make these corners have to come down and tackle him. When that happens, that's when he breaks off his big runs. He's broken a lot of tackles this year, but I think what we saw second quarter and then certainly second half, third quarter, that was the best Carolina has run the football in terms of just consistently in a long time against a legitimate SEC opponent.
Hear from Coach Beamer coming up tomorrow, as always, for his usual Tuesday press conference at 1 o'clock here on the Game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, and your Reaction Monday here on the Game.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on your Reaction Monday. Reminder, the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest rolls on. $700 up for grabs this upcoming weekend as the Gamecocks take on the Sooners in Norman. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register if you have not already. Of course, if no touchdown this weekend, $800 up for grabs when they return from the bye to take on Texas A&M, the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest. I want to hit this stat because we've been very critical of third downs this entire year and the average distance to go on third downs. South Carolina, their best day of the entire year in that situation on Saturday. 7 of 15, 46.7% on third downs, average distance 6.1.
How were the second downs this time?
I got to do. I got to
think they were much better.
They had to have been much better if that was your third down.
Yeah,
to go there.
The reference there, y'all, if you missed it, was that last week? You were talking about just how awful they were on second down
last week.
Second down was bad. The crazy thing about it was Carolina, if you looked at the halftime stats, I think was 0 for 5 on third down.
Mm-hmm.
They went from 0 for 5 on third down to 5 for 10 on third down within one second half drive. So they completely flipped that on its head by converting 5 of 5 for that stretch in what would have gone down as one of the best drives in South Carolina history if they had won the game. But I digress. Yeah, they're much better on third down for sure.
They completed a 3rd and 15 on that drive too. Had a 22-yard pass to Mazio Bennett. But the rest of them were more manageable. There were several, 3rd and shorts. I mean, Rocket Sanders' touchdown run was a 3rd and goal.
Beamer was going to have a decision to make. Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine as that drive goes along? Like you were going to have to go for it, but not getting points. So as it got to third down, like I was sitting there, like looking ahead, like man, if they have to put this thing on a 4th down and potentially don't get points after what that drive was, would have been so demoralizing. But anyway, yeah, they that was the one time they got behind the chains on that drive. Was there was a sack, and then they did convert the 3rd and 15, which actually, dude, that was a perfect play call on that 3rd and 15 for what Bama was in. Like the spot that Mazio went to and the routes around him, it was like it was designed to attack exactly what Bama was in. So there were some good play calls.
Yeah, I mean, same thing on the 4th and 6. That was the Mazio Bennett touchdown. I went back and watched it. Really good route concept there. It did need some time to develop. It's down the field. Ball was thrown into the back of the end zone. Obviously, it's kind of like a wheel route, basically. I mean, Mazio was in the slot, and that thing came open against the zone coverage. Josh Simon had but Josh Simon was blocking a defensive end one-on-one. Sellers had enough time to throw it. Yeah, so there was some good calls in there. What do y'all make, guys, of – so all the conversation going into the game on the Bama side was how poorly their defense had played, right? They had just given up 40 points, right, to Vanderbilt and lost. We knew South Carolina did some similar things to Vanderbilt, mobile quarterback, some similar concepts, some option-type stuff. Are we encouraged overall by what we saw from South Carolina moving the football? Of course, the caveat is Sands' turnover. That's until they prove otherwise. That's always going to be the asterisk. Or is it more, need to see a little bit more because Bama was not playing well defensively in the last 6 quarters going into this game?
I mean, you did what you hoped they were going to be able to do against a defense that was playing the way they were playing. Like, if you go out there and only put up 3 points and, get outgained by 200 yards or something like that, like you did, the week before, then you're saying, okay, why couldn't you take advantage of against defense that was struggling? Like you said, sans turnovers, they did just about everything else right as far as moving the ball was.
Yeah, they did. And, they managed in the second half to, like, kind of shorten the game down and flip the pressure back to Alabama. I mean, I think, like anything, wasn't perfect, clearly, and turnovers, mistakes. But for the most part, I think based on the expectation of what the offense was going to be this week after what we saw last week, from a lot of people, what a lot of people's expectations were, I mean, you gave yourself a chance, which I think is what most everybody wanted to see. It was just a matter of could you actually take advantage of that chance, and they didn't. What did y'all, and I know we don't have much time, Chris and I already talked about this, Tyler, what did you think of Bama not falling down at the one and ending the game right there? And let me just say, I guarantee people in that stadium are going, a Nick Saban team would not have made that mistake.
Yeah, I thought that was the only thing that allowed South Carolina, obviously, the opportunity to drive down the field and make the game as interesting as it was there at the very end. But when you're that wide open and you're Jeremy Bernard, I guess it's hard to think critically in that situation, and you just go ahead and walk in. But yeah, it would have been more
coming out of a timeout
would have been more advantageous. Just take the dive, run out the clock, and then we're not talking about a missed 2-pointer. We're not talking about an onside kick, and they walk out with a much more easy victory than that.
Any other time, I would give the player the benefit of the doubt on that. Coming out of a timeout, and you're Bama, like you're supposed to make the game the winning plays, the winning decisions. That I don't know. The second that happened, if you're Carolina, you're going, there's a lot of time on this clock. Like it wasn't one of those things where you got to go the length of the field in 30 seconds, and the chances of that happening are very, very low. You're going, well, let's see what's going to happen. And then we did see what happened.
Wild day in Tuscaloosa on Saturday, that's for sure. We'll have more to unpack coming up tomorrow as well for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs, halftime show. Myself, Terry Ford, up next on Reaction Monday here on the game.